Bun.js is a tool which surprisingly attracted very little hate in the JavaScript ecosystem when it was launched, right? Usually what you would see is there is some sort of split, some sort of division, people fighting. I was on the fighting side, to be honest, when Dino came out, because I did not see any upfront advantages of moving your workload from Node to Dino. But with this Bun version 1 and how it got popular, it was surprising to see that there was no hot take as such. I mean, people, of course, were having doubts. It was not production ready. Everyone knew that it's not something you can just swap, you can just remove Node and install Bun directly. But still, now this is an article which I want to review, I want to read, and I want to discuss my thoughts and opinion on it. So the title of this article is interesting. First of all, Bun hype, how we learned nothing from Yarn. So the first thing is that the author just directly draws a conclusion that Bun and Yarn are very similar in launches. So that is probably something we'll see in this article. So let's start. Here we go again, making the same mistake. I'm constantly reminded that every 5 years the amount of programmers in the world doubles, which means at any point 50% of the industry has less than 5 years of experience, which is probably why we keep falling for stuff like Bun. But I've seen this movie before and I know how it ends. Okay. So the story of Yarn. So all of you who don't know what Yarn is, it's a package manager. NPM is, of course, it's abbreviated as 100 things, but one of the abbreviation is Node Package Manager. Yarn is one, and PNPM is also one. Bun is one now, because Bun is like a collection of all these tooling. I see a lot of parallel between Yarn and Bun. Both targets existing open source systems, and instead of actually contributing to them, just went off to create their own competing technology. Both sold themselves on being way faster. Both went in the goal of splitting the ecosystem. Neither had good backwards compatibility support, and both announced that they were officially V1 and ready for production. Let's figure this out. Both targeting existing open source system, that's true, instead of actually contributing to them. Well, that's also true. This is also what I said years back when Dino came out, and Dino is actually created by the creator of Node.js, so it was more surprising than somebody who's extremely unknown, like Jared, for example, who created Bun. He's not affiliated with Node.js, or he's not a creator, or he's not a contributor. But with case of Dino, that was like a little weird to me. Both sold themselves on being way faster. That's true. Bun sells itself a lot. I mean, the whole point of using Bun in a lot of ways is that it's super fast. Both went with the goal of splitting the ecosystem. This is, you won't see Bun advertising or saying, or anyone but saying something like this, but it does split it in a way, the point which I covered in my last video as well. Because when you start using Bun, and especially the APIs of bun.file, or various kind of APIs which Bun has implemented on its own, you are in a split ecosystem. Now, maybe half of your code is running in Node, half is running in Bun. Chances are that you would try to, just convert either Node to Bun, or, just fall back Bun to Node if it's not stable, and so on. Neither had a good backwards compatibility support. This is true for V1, but this sentence I'm a little skeptical about is because Bun also advertises that it wants to be a drop-in replacement for Node. So that means that it has to support, Node as a whole. So I'm not sure if this sentence would hold 1 year, 2 years down the line for Bun if it is around. But yeah, that is true for version 1. It doesn't support like everything Node has to offer just yet. And officially V1 and ready for production. This is also true. Bun, I feel, is not ready for production for a lot of workloads. It's just not. There are official Node.js packages which are very common, including DNS and including DNAME and all these things. And we can't use Bun in those workloads. So, and yeah, of course, it does not support Windows that good just yet. So what happened to Yarn? Well, they came out with a dozen cool new features that NPM didn't have, and they were many times faster than NPM. But only then a year later, NPM was already faster than Yarn. And another year later, Yarn would also create a blog post explaining how it will be ultimately impossible for them, and so on and so forth. So long story short, there's a direct comparison between Bun and Yarn in terms of speed. I'm not sure if I agree here, because making something optimized takes a lot of time. And if NPM was faster than Yarn in just a years of time, either the NPM team was focusing on something else and not performance directly, or, I mean, I've not seen the source code of NPM, but it's definitely smaller than the source code of a runtime like Bun or Node, right? So it might have some low-hanging fruits it was not optimizing just yet, which it did, which it got faster. So what about other features Yarn offered? Well, with each passing year, more and more of them were implemented and released in NPM. And as of today, all the formally unique features of Yarn are built into NPM. Well, I'll be honest. We did a little migration last week where we shifted from Yarn to PNPM. And I don't like Yarn anymore, to be honest, because Yarn it seems dated. When you start using a software like PNPM, this is also something I tweeted the other day, that I've used Yarn for years and I've used PNPM for 3 days. And I cannot believe PNPM is not the official package manager of Node. It's just so good. It's just so much better than Yarn or even NPM the last time I tried it, right? I'm not sure like what changes NPM has made now, but PNPM just blows Yarn out of water. But anyway, sticking to Bun here. But Bun is surely different, right? I mean, it's written in Zig and Zig is super fast. Yeah, I mean, this is something people think the reason why Bun is fast is Zig. No, it's not. Node is written in C++ and it's the same level of, low level thing, because whatever language like C or C++, it's compiling to assembly, it's compiling to, the architecture on which your computer is running. It doesn't need a virtual machine in between, right? For example, JavaScript needs a virtual machine, which is V8. Java needs a virtual machine, which is JVM. Python is, it's a very slow language. But these languages, Zig, C, C++, they just run directly on the metal. It's not that Bun is fast because it uses Zig and Node is slow because it uses C++. It's just that Node is not optimized enough right now. If it is optimized, it can be even faster than Zig. I don't know, if you just go one-on-one, Blazing, one will be faster. But C and C++ is basically which powers like a lot of world and a lot of performant technologies. So it can't be slow. He says that I can see a similar thing happening with Node. If given proper attention, roughly equivalent speed should be possible to the point where differences are negligible. Now here's where things get interesting, because does Node has that level of bandwidth or even venture capital or maybe attention? Node is an open source project. I'm not exactly sure about how the structure of Node.js or what exactly happens behind the scenes. How is Node.js funded as a project? If there are any full-time people who are working on Node.js, performance levels or features or something, whatever. But I am pretty sure that with the right motivation and the right things, Node will and can be faster than Bun. That's what he's writing, and I agree with that. Because if you look at Dino, for example, I think a lot of things which Node was missing earlier, like fetch, or I don't exactly remember, but there were a few more things which were not available at all earlier. Then they were behind feature flags, and now they are inside the actual runtime. So Node grows, right? It's not like it's a stagnant piece of technology. It's not growing since years. It's well maintained. It's battle tested, production ready. It's just, if you talk about Bun, it's just not that fast right now. You should probably acknowledge that the fact that some of the benchmarks Bun brags about are cherry-picked or misrepresented. Yeah, I mean, installations and everything is a little ambiguous all the times, because there are network speeds, there are, your computer, your SSD, what you are running it on. So they will go ahead and post the best benchmark available to them, the Bun website. That's okay. So this little rant is about Yarn not working on Windows, which I agree is important, and Bun still doesn't work on Windows that good. So that's also one thing which again I think is valid. Okay, so Yarn came out, forced NPM to get better, and then died. It's not dead, but okay. What's the problem? If that's all it did, then Yarn would have been great. But sadly, it wasn't. NPM was focused on developing and releasing the features the vast majority of users needed, but Yarn was focused on features Facebook needed, many of which are not important for 99% of people using NPM. However, once people started using Yarn, NPM had to reprioritize what features they would develop and release. Instead of delivering higher value features that would have been more relevant to users, they had to quickly play catch up and add equivalent features to what Yarn was offering, as to avoid a split in the ecosystem. So about this point, I think Node is at a point where if it just confines to the ECMAScript, ECMA spec, that is what modules are, let's say, module implementation. Browsers have modules now, fetch, for example, native fetch available, having, working a little bit on standard library inside Node. As long as Node is taking care of that on one side, I don't think that prioritizing on performance is such a bad idea. Node is such a versatile runtime. It's available on so many cloud providers, Cloudflare, AWS. It literally it's just the heart of the web. You need Node.js, you need a JavaScript runtime to to run JavaScript in browser. It's available on servers. React server-side rendering happens on Node. It's not a bad idea, right? So I wouldn't say that. In case of Yarn, it would have distracted NPM team from shipping important and interesting features. But in case of Bun, I think it's actually a good idea if Node just starts allocating some time on performance, because the benefits are a lot, right? And I'll tell you how. For example, let's say if you have a function that gets invoked 1,000,000 times on AWS Lambda, right? You can run a Node.js function on AWS Lambda. If you save like 100 millisecond execution time, or a second of execution time on a long running job, that's a lot of money saved, right? On AWS Lambda, if you have million or tens of millions of executions a day. So performance software is not only just feels better as a DX, but it's also cheaper if you think about it. So it's not a bad idea, right? Okay, part 2. Bun is actually much worse. Strong headline, but let's see what it has got. Unlike Yarn, which offers speed and dozen new features, Bun offers speed and like 3 new features. Okay, let's briefly go over through them. Macros, used during a build process. They have been called a mistake by some. My biggest concern is that your build process is now stuck with Bun. You can't switch to something else unless it has an equivalent macro system, or you rewrite your build process. You're opting into future tech debt. Okay, so for those of you in the audience who don't know what macros are, think about macros as blocks which are replaced. So these are placeholders, and let's say if you have a big file and you are repeating some level of placeholder content in every single file, so instead of copy pasting that across all the files, you just create a macro, and on the build time, the runtime, which is Bun in this case, would replace the content which you wanted to replace with the placeholder, right? It's not being done on the runtime, right? That's important. It's done on build time, so that means your actual source code still contains all the paths. If you have used C++, I think, I'm not sure if C has macros, but C++, these languages have macros, right? So Bun introduces that. Second, Bun APIs. These new APIs that literally do the same thing Node.js APIs do, but faster. This is worse than macros because now your code is a Bun virus. The language is strong, but I don't disagree, to be honest. This is something I also pointed out in the last video I made, because the moment you do bun.file, the moment you do bun.something, you are not in the Node.js world anymore. Your code will just not work if you invoke it with Node. No matter how much Node.js team would work, they would probably never implement a Bun API in their runtime. It just doesn't make sense. If Node has a file system FS module, why would they ever implement Bun as a namespace in their own runtime? It just doesn't make sense, and Bun is also not that big. So this thing is huge. If anything, we also use Bun in some of our toolings because of the speed up and the TypeScript support, but we would never use any Bun API, to be very honest, because someday something breaks in Bun, we need Node, or for any reason, like we need to build our project not on our systems somewhere else where Bun is not available, this just stops working then, right? So this is a huge thing. Forcing all of your users library to adopt Bun. This is another force split of the ecosystem, similar to what Yarn was doing, but much worse. This definitely is a force split, right? If Bun, for example, let's say starts coming up with a bunch of tutorials or a bunch of things, I would, be skeptical of that, first of all, because unless the runtime gets really big, it's best that you stick on a technology where you can switch the runtime anytime you want. And the only way to do that is when you are not using specific APIs. Now, Node has been around since decades, right? So Node gets that advantage where, Node defines what its runtimes has and doesn't. Bun, if it's coming 15 years later, and if it wants to capture the marketplace, it should capture it a significant chunk first, 20, 30, 40%. And then let's say 40% of people who write server-side JavaScript, if they are using Bun instead of Node, then Bun is in a position to decide what level of APIs it has to develop. Not right now, not today. And if it does that, then it's just splitting the ecosystem. That is something I can agree. I could maybe see some wrapper library used in code that checks if Bun exists, and if so, it uses the faster API, and if it not, it fallbacks to Node. In fact, I actually saw one tweet. There was this package is really Node. It's not a popular package. I just saw it on Twitter. It just was published 11 days ago. But if you look at this package is probably meant for these use cases where you are mixing and matching runtimes together. And if you really want to check if we are running under Node or Dino or whatever, the source code is interesting. It taught me a few things I did not know about things you can do with V8. So yeah, this is possible. Like he says, if Bun gets remotely popular, I imagine this would be very common. libraries which are just checking if the runtime is Bun or Node and then deciding what API you should use. Meta language support. Should Node.js have the Vue template compiler built in? It sounds absolutely insane to ask that. What about Markdown or Sass or CoffeeScript? Yeah, that would be pretty stupid for the main platform that is everything. It would feel very short-sighted. Meta languages exist to fill in the gap in the original languages. They are by their nature impermanent and flexible. They are like adding a really good suspension to your car as you drive over the portholes in the original language. Until then, original language can come by and fill the portholes. So this point is also interesting because this shows that, one of the things which Bun's focus is that, let's support JSX, for example. Let's support React DOM rendering somehow, like natively. Let's support YAML. Let's support TOML as a language. It sounds great, but I still have to agree here. It's better that it's it's something which is an add-on, right? It doesn't come with the binary, the bun, the platform, the executable. I don't want to, for example, we don't use TOML at all. So, there are 1,000 such things, 1,000 small features or 1,000 things which we might or might not use as it grows. It's okay to keep runtime and the meta languages different. I don't think that this is a bad point at all. But at the same time, I have to incline with the fact that a lot of developers do a lot of things wrongly, right? Just because there are so many options out there in the market. YAML parsing, for example, has 100 packages on NPM, right? And it's at some point that is also a problem, because if a tool is so common or if a use case is very common, it might as well be part of the runtime, right? Because that runtime can guarantee the stability and the feature set, the maintenance, the security, everything, the performance. So I'm a little split here myself. I think both sides make sense. It makes sense that you keep the runtime as clean as you want, just something which is executed. But at the same time, it does make sense that, you should include most common use cases within your thing, because Node.js anyway is a platform, is a runtime where there are thousands of packages for simplest of use cases, which, people are just fighting over. So why not just include it? TypeScript usage has plateaued around 2020, and the past year finally showed its first sign of decline as it's replaced with better, simpler alternatives like JSDocs and a potential comment system based on ES202X official type system. With those portholes filled, TypeScript will either need to find new portholes to try to smooth and justify its existence, or accept that its job is done and slowly fade away, never actually dying the same. Okay, this point I don't agree. This is the first point which I strongly disagree with. If you are saying that TypeScript has a simpler alternative like ESLint plugin JSDocs, then you haven't used TypeScript. The amount of stability and the locking which TypeScript provides in your code base, the amount of refactoring you can do with confidence, the amount of changes you can do and just have a lint step which just type checks your whole project. ESLint has a separate job, right? ESLint's plugin of JSDoc is not an equivalent or a simpler alternative to TypeScript. There are things you cannot do in JSDoc which are possible in TypeScript. This is wrong. I don't think TypeScript is going anywhere in the next 5 years, let's say. I don't know. If somebody comes out with a revolutionary new type system, that's a different thing. But in the next 5 years, it's not going anywhere. And JSDoc, for once, is not taking away TypeScript down. So let's just agree to disagree on this point. Sass is a great example, has dropped in usage and the satisfaction as the meta languages APIs evolved to become much more complex. This is something I agree with. Sass, at some point we also used to use Sass on codedamn, but now we don't. Tailwind is what we do use right now. So the last one, built-in meta languages, sort of leans into what Bun really is. It's just an abstraction layer for a bunch of technologies. It isn't an actual alternative or a competitor. It's literally the same thing, just already built in, which sounds nice on paper, but ultimately is pretty bad. Abstractions can be great and simplify things. Let's look at Webpack, for example. Webpack is awful. No one disagrees. No one likes stealing. Then, Vue CLI came in and then Wheat came in. So that's true. But Bun isn't doing that. It isn't taking something hard and making a simpler abstraction for it. It's taking ESBuild and abstracting it just like how Wheat is. It's not an improvement. It's basically the same thing. So this is something I don't know. If Bun uses ESBuild at all, or it has like written everything from scratch. I think it has, right? ESBuild is written in Go, and Bun does not use Go, it uses Zig. So it's bundler and everything, I think, is written from scratch. This is also the case for unit tests, when they don't even pretend to offer something new. Instead of telling you to write your code in Jest or VTest like normal, they'll just hijack the imports and replace. We use VTest. VTest is as fast as you want things to be, right? Unless you have like tens of thousands of tests, and Bun is like consistently beating VTest in a 10x speed up. At least for now, it doesn't make sense to switch the binary because there is a cost of switching. You have to migrate your code. VTest has an isolated mode, which apparently we were also running our code inside. And when you disable isolated mode, VTest itself gets like 10 times faster, close to like 5 to 10 times faster. And on top of that, if Bun provides a 10 times additional speed up, then that's a different story altogether. But yeah, I agree with the testing part. VTest is, it's good. It's good in terms of speed. It's not like Jest, it's very fast. So Bun is an abstraction layer on top of the tools we already have, meaning it will always be behind the curve and can introduce additional bugs at that layer. Not ideal for such mission critical systems like installing dependencies, testing code. Okay, this is something, I mean, this is a little bit too much, I would say. It's not just an abstraction layer, it's a rewrite, right? It's more of a rewrite of a lot of things with performance as a first-class citizen. That's how I would put it. Not ideal for such mission-critical system. Depends a lot on how well your software is battle-tested and how many tests and how rigorous they are, how many edge cases they cover, and so on. I mean, bugs can always be introduced no matter what, but the scope or the limitation of that blast radius can be really minimized if you have a very solid product and a test suite and, you know, foundations for writing that. So yeah, I mean, so far there are some things which are right, some things which are wrong, but we haven't gotten to one of the two worst things that Bun does and the really scary parts. The first one is Windows. I picked on Yarn for its poor Windows support, but they look amazing compared to Bun. At least they kind of had Windows support. It only barely worked some of the time, but it was there. However, one of the dozen features of Bun brags about, not even one of them is supported on Windows when it was released as version 1. The Windows build is highly experimental and not production ready. So imagine this, they just launched and they are showing off all these cool features. They're excited about what people want to use. What is more likely to happen? As thousands of people start using it and start giving feedback, finding bugs, requesting feedback, requesting features, needing support, do you think they will completely ignore all the new users for the next year and focus solely on getting complete feature parity, making it a polished, rock solid, reliable, ultra fast Windows compatible build? Like killing off any momentum they built from their initial hype cycle and maybe even losing them VC funding. Focus almost all of their very small team's effort on keeping their existing users happy by improving the Linux OS X versions that already mostly work, so the product looks well maintained and can slowly gain adoption within these communities while being widely spread by tribal developers, intentionally creating non-portable code, knowing that it will not work in Node or even on Windows. So, yeah, I mean, this is true. So this is true in a way. Their team size is not, I mean, supporting operating systems with feature parity and solving bugs might take a lot more developers than they currently might have. But I don't think it is an impossible problem, right? If you're a fast team, if you know what you're doing, if you're smart developers, you can get things done. So I'm not as worried about as he is for the next year. I think if, you know, Bun does all the right things, I am pretty sure they can pull off not only just the compatibility, most of the compatibility, but also the feature parity and the Windows support and everything. So yeah, I mean, people have done things, you know, smart people can do things which other people think they can't. So that's something I believe in. Of all the tools they put into Bun, the one tool they didn't build is a version manager. That is insane to me. I think it's actually insane that Node.js doesn't have a version manager built in. On Node.js, I have NVM, Nodist, NVM Windows. What's considerably worse than having to deal with these 4 tools is do the same thing is just not having any tool. Node.js is way more focused on backwards compatibility than Bun is, but the time has gone and even Node.js deprecated parts of their API. Many times this is a result of V8 engine itself deprecating features. So I don't believe for a second that Bun got everything right on the first try and nothing about it will change over time and all the code you write it in will always work forever. Especially since they are inheriting whatever deprecations will come with the Apple WebKit.js engine. This is something I did not think about, but I mean, I have again like 2 opinions on this. The first one, what he's saying here is that as the Bun runtime grows, there will be decisions which are taken. Maybe bun.file API changes, right? So when that happens, you don't want to break people who are already using bun on production, or they just automatically mistakenly updates because there is just one curl command to update the bun runtime. They just update something and things get broken. But at the same time, I feel that bun is so early that they don't probably need a bun version manager. I mean, this itself then contradicts with the fact that they have released a version 1 which they say is production ready. So his point also holds that if you are production ready, then just give it a version manager. But at the same time, I say that no, because it's not that production ready that you can just swap any program in Node with bun. That's why maybe their better focus right now is on fixing the existing broken things than having a version manager which just locks bun in a particular place. The most likely cause, for example, for this, the one thing which also makes sense is that they want people to upgrade, right? Because right now they don't intend to break, they don't have a lot of bun APIs, right? They have a few, but they don't have a lot. So they don't intend to break anything. If anything, they are fixing the compatibility issues with Node.js. So anytime a person upgrades to a newer version of bun, they actually get less bugs because bun is not expanding its own private API scope. It's just fixing and it's just patching the compatibility gaps between Node and bun with most updates, right? So that is why maybe, I mean, if you just lock yourself on bun v1, there are so many bugs within the current ecosystem as well, which bun has to fix. It's not exactly v1, let's be honest on that. So it's not exactly a version 1 which is production ready. That's the thing. If it was a true version 1 with a production ready thing with a limited, I mean, the scope of APIs clearly discuss that this is what we have fully implemented, battle tested, and the Node test suite, whatever, and it passes all of the tests, versus this is a set of things we will improve or implement in version 2, then it would have made sense. This point would have made sense. That's why I don't agree with this point, because it doesn't make sense until and unless you have just cleaned up the compatibility gaps of common things at least. So yeah, if bun came out in 2012, it will have grunt. In 14, it will have gulp. In 16, it will have webpack. 18, rollup. So it's just a little short on bun that it's just sticking to the fastest and coolest technologies in the given time. I've been very hard on bun in this post, not because it sucks, because it's almost good and people will be excited to try it out and not realize all the downsides. Again, just like Jan, I was pretty hyped for bun too, but I've since tempered my excitement and looked at it from a practical and a historical standpoint. If bun actually did everything it claimed, then I would be 100% on board. But the non-portable code, the complete lack of windows, and some of the short-sighted choices they have made brings me back to reality. I hope these critiques will lead to improvements in bun, and the thought process will allow others to look bun from a more cautious and thoughtful perspective. Yeah, I mean, this overall net, I think this is a harsh but a true blog post. A lot of things make sense, and if anything, like, bun can use this blog post as a thing to prove wrong, because I mean, this critique is valid at some point, but it's not something which cannot be disproved with immense amount of hard work and immense amount of dedication put over the next few months. So, okay, let's look at predictions, and I'll say which ones I agree with and which ones I don't agree with. Most of the projects bun picked on will get performance improvements over the next year and so tighten the gap between them and bun. Okay, this just means that Node.js will get better. You will start seeing more and more repos that mention bun in the readmes, maybe exclusively. We are seeing it with some repos. All developers that quit their first dev job 6 months to become a YouTube coding influencer will make bun is the future. Oh my god, video with this thumbnail. In the hopes that it will trick people watching a series. Let's just hope this is not my thumbnail. Okay. Thank god. In the hopes that this will trick people into watching their 12-part tutorial series on bun. Like and subscribe. You should like and subscribe this video, because we don't like bun in this one at least. We have not perfected our tools yet. As we continue to evolve and invent newer and better options, bun will struggle to keep up, and people slowly will use it less as they get impatient and are willing to just install a dependency if it means a better, more practical solutions. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure if I agree or disagree. Bun will probably be around for about 5 years. That seems to be the lifespan of most similar tooling. I don't agree, but let's see how this turns out to be. Bun will eventually have really great Windows support, probably right as people stop using it. I agree on this part, not so sure about that. Let's see. Again, depends a lot on the iteration speed and how fast bun ships. For some reason, bun never adds a version manager, and instead 4 computing options shows up, all sucking in different ways. Okay, this year is 2000 something, and we have finally converted the last CommonJS node module to ESM. This was the only possible after humanity finally gave in and let AI take over. Was it worth it? Joe Biden will get a second term, but like, no one is really happy about it. It turns out that Jan guy really did see SAS squash. Now I feel bad for making fun of him, honestly. Okay, this is something I don't know about, so I'm just gonna leave that. Vue is still better than everything else, but people will just use whatever the YouTube coders said was the hot and new thing, because if it wasn't, why would they have made a 20 tutorial video about it? So, okay. They're going to remake Breaking Bad and it won't be very good. Someone in Frimigen's chat is actually right about something for the first time ever. Did you know that he works at Netflix? Okay. This was a fun read, I mean, at least at the end, and a serious read at the start, but I agree, to be honest, with a lot of things here. Disagree with a few, but it's mostly more or less a challenge for Bun and the Owen team to prove this article wrong. What do you think about Bun? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for this one. I'm going to see you in the next Bun really soon.